So, did it switch? Yay! Okay, cool. It works. Yeah. Hmm. You are live, Adisha. Okay, I'll have a look at it. I'll have a look at it. You carry on.
It's but natural that his attention will deviate from his phone and he'll look at her and answer that question. The other option she could ask is, do you know anyone who generally
But
enjoys this
natural
job?
that his attention
I
will
don't.
deviate from
And it
his
doesn't
phone
surprise
and he'll
me.
look at her
It's
and
super
answer
stressful
that
and
question.
worse than that, it feels like you're
The
playing
other
a
option
game
she could ask is,
against
do you know
someone.
anyone who generally
So the point here is that there's some kind of you're trying to start a conversation with the person and he might at least look at you. So in her case, you're connecting it to the situation and it's going to be really helpful. Okay, so y'all can note down your kind of conversation starter as well. The next thing is you introduce yourself, who you are. And in case you are pitching your product, you will introduce your product to the person. This thing is totally based on the person listening skills. And focus on the word you. That is, you need to sell the product to them, you need to sell yourself to them. So explain them how it would help them. But you're explaining yourself in a way that they would like it. Avoid jargons. If you can, add information or statistics. It gives a better outlook on the product or yourself. So as before, instead of saying, hey, I'm Travera, I'm an app developer, you explain yourself in a better way. Like if she wants to explain it, instead of just saying that she's an app developer, she'll explain what kind of apps she creates or what exactly is her role as an app developer. In the second situation, she would tell him the product she is working on. Like here, she is working on an app for businesses, for recruitment and all. So she's going to speak about that. Recruitment is a game, and I'm on a mission to help job seekers win that game every time they play. So if he's interested, he'll definitely look up. The next part. Once you're done with explaining about you, explain what is your company or product about. And what is it that sets it exceptionally, and how it can help that particular person, and in what kind of benefit can he gain from it, and at the end, is it really worth their time, money and effort. So do not say it in the shortest way possible. Short is sweet, but you do not have to give any vague terms for them to get confused. So instead of saying that her company writes mobile device applications for other businesses, she could say something like, my company develops mobile applications that businesses use to train their staff remotely. This means that senior managers can spend time on other important tasks. If it was a product, she would say, my product contains career advice based on hard data and insights from actual HR pros and makes use of AI. So she said the same thing in a way that he would relate to, because he is someone who needs people in his company. He needs a lot of human resource. So when she speaks about how it can help him, he would like it better. The most important part of your whole pitch. Why me or my product? What is it that it's the most important part of my product, and why is it unique? I can do this by contrasting with my competitors and attract them with their preferences. You can be stalking the person as well, but you do not have to show them that directly. So you need to know that person's likes and dislikes and use that against them here. So unless instead of saying we are unlike others, you can say something like, if it's for your company or yourself, you can use, we use a novel approach because unlike most other developers, we visit each organization to find out exactly what people need. Although this takes a bit more time, it means that on average, 90% of our clients are happy with the first beta version of their app. When it comes to the product part, I would say, as a result, thousands of job seekers from all over the globe will find and land careers they've always dreamt about, quickly and with no fuss. So tell me, what's your thought? So in both these approaches, we are attracting the client by explaining it how it could help them. Plus, we are contrasting with the other competitors as well. So once this is done, you're completed with crafting your pitch. The next part is where you find errors. You write down your entire pitch. You edit it. You make sure that the words sound good. They aren't repetitive. And okay, once you do this, practice this with your family, friends, anyone you meet. Also, another good practice is to record your pitch. When you record it, you can listen to it, see the voice modulations. Voice modulations matter as well. Make sure that you're not repeating a particular words, because we usually have this habit that we repeat certain words many times, and it doesn't make sense. Like when you're speaking to a professional person, it wouldn't make sense at all. So make sure there isn't a lot of repetition, and that you're using good formal words which make you sound royal. Next part is the most important part. Words don't matter if the means isn't right. So guys, you can see the same girl Travera in different poses. So would any one of you, like I'm opening this up to everyone, any one of you, please unmute yourself and tell me which one of this would you as a hirer like to talk to?
Last one.
Okay. Aradhana prefers the last one. Anyone else?
I will go with second last.
Aww.
The second last. Okay, as a hirer, you all would talk to them. That's interesting. Alisha?
I will go with the second one.
I think it's not hire the first person, but yeah, I think maybe they had a Bangalore traffic to deal with, and that's why they look like this right now.
Exactly. I was like Corona time. I understand.
So basically, if you're a busy person and you have to look at all these, yeah, she definitely looks cute in the last two ones. The first one seems like Bangalore traffic, and the second one is plain. It's like a normal girl just standing. The third one, she is already telling me you like she is booing or making it sound that she's already negative. The fourth one, she has her hands closed. That is one sign that either she's not letting her whole self to you. It's a closed body language. So people usually find these people a bit secluded, reserved, and they aren't preferred. So usually, if you use a body language expert or someone, when it's a first time you talk to them, definitely after you join, the last two will be cool, good. But initially, for initial conversations, the second one would be preferred the most because she has an open body language, an open body posture, and she is pretty formal. So yes, non-verbal skills are definitely taken care of. Like they matter a lot. So what do you need other than your pitching skills, like other than your speaking skills? You need to perfect your body language, the way you sit, the way you stand, the way you move. Everything matters. Fidgeting with your fingers. Like some people have this habit of playing with their cufflinks or opening, closing their shirt buttons, whatever. That's fidgeting and it's not at all preferred. Be it an online conversation or offline conversation. Anyways, online conversations, it's not much seen. But if there's some kind of fidget seen in you, even it can be noticed through a video call as well. So these things do matter, and make sure you do not do them in a pitching, like when you're pitching or when you're talking to a person. The next thing, something which matters a lot, is your smile. Some people tend to smile continuously throughout a conversation. We need to be avoiding that because a smile sets you apart. Every time you speak to another person, your smile needs to make them feel special. Eye contact is another important thing. So there's this thing that if I am talking to a group of people, Every time I'm listening to someone, I need to look at them to make them feel that I'm just listening to them. They need to feel special. When I'm talking to every single person in the room, if I smile differently at them, they'll all feel that there's something special about them and I care for them. That's one very important thing about this. The next thing is a good attire. Make sure that you have a proper attire at different places. You can't go to a party in pajamas. It needs to be proper. The last thing, you need to have some knowledge about various subjects. And if you don't have that, if you don't know who you're speaking to or you don't know what they are working with, you can go ahead and ask them and reply to them in a way that they feel that they are being listened to. You do not have to pretend or you do not have to use some words which don't make sense. Make sure that you are getting something from their talk. Also, if nothing works, you can also listen to them and emphasize at the places that they wanted to emphasize at and ask them questions related to that. That also comes to the rescue at those situations. A few important points to remember. Be positive, avoid using negative terms. Be flexible. Try to change, adapt to situations. Next, be confident, don't ramble or fidget. Update your pitch with the context. Don't smile unnecessarily and be a very good listener. It's a noted fact, it's a very important and well understood fact that if you listen to the person, they start liking you more than they otherwise would. Okay, so here's an example of this wardrobe stylist who is targeting leads. Okay, she meets a businesswoman and she's talking to them about her work. And this is how she go. I'm Meghna Doshi and I'm a wardrobe stylist for busy businesswomen. I help them take the stress out of getting dressed by cleaning up their closets, mixing and matching what they own, and shopping for what they need, ultimately saving them time, easing frustration, and leaving them feeling confident in their clothes. So if you guys realize, she didn't tell you that she's just a wardrobe stylist and she would just help you to mismatch clothes and wear them. So if that was told, maybe if I'm a businesswoman, it wouldn't matter to me. But when she explained it in a way that I think that it's really helpful to me, that's when I want to talk to her, communicate with her, and keep a connection for a longer period of time. So that's usually how pitches are supposed to be made. Another thing, I recently organized an event where the speaker had mentioned this particular point, which I would like to share y'all. It's on body language. So Deepika Padukone was once asked who is the most romantic actor that she's ever worked with. And she said that it was undoubtedly Shah Rukh Khan. The reason wasn't because of his acting or the way his dialogues are or the way he behaves. But the reason was that when he looks at her or any actress, they feel that they are the only one in the entire world left. And it's just them both. So it was the eye contact, the way you look at a person and make them feel, make them heard, that is what matters. So that's one thing very important, I could say, in your pitching or communicating with anyone. So guys, I really hope you all have thought of a pitch or something. And okay, I would suggest you all to unmute yourself one by one and say a small pitch on yourself. That would be great.
Okay, I think I'll go first.
Yes, Pavitra.
I'm not ready at all. So my pitch is introducing my YouTube channel.
Pavitra, you are not audible,
Oh.
I think. Maybe you can type it in the chat box. I'll read it out for you.
Wait.
Meanwhile, Adisha, you can go ahead. Anyone else? Up with their pitch? Don't worry, it can be a simple pitch. Take up any situation. Students here, speak about, we are in our second year, final year, we all, whoever is here. So the students, you all can tell how you would impress a recruiter. Adisha, maybe you could tell how would you impress your manager with a product design or something.
Okay, let's take.
Hello.
Yes, Adisha.
Hi. I just lost the connection. Thank you, Ritika, for the talk. Anyone has any questions? That was great. Like I'm hoping for I have a better elevator pitch than hi, I'm Adisha and I work in Bangalore as a front end engineer for the next time. Thank you so much. Anyone has any questions?
Anyone, any questions?
I think no question, but I would like to say it was really a great session.
Thank you so much, Seema.
Yeah, Ritika, it was really nice, and I really liked your point where you shared that it is good to discuss around different things, and there should be different knowledge around various domains. Basically, I think that actually meant to be just resourceful when you are doing an elevator pitch, and I really like that point of yours.
Yes. So one more thing you could do is one good place where you can use this. So people participate in hackathons and all, right? So it's not an elevator pitch there because you get, I think, about 8 to 10 minutes over there. But one thing, while you're explaining there, you can keep these points in mind and do it there. So just remember the first 40 seconds are the most important. They are the eye catchers. So at those places, like if it's a longer period, then you have to attract them in the first 40 seconds.
I think that's a great tip, Kritika.
Thank you so much, Adisha. I think Pavitra is typing her pitch.
Yeah, let's wait for her pitch. I think it will
Yep.
be great. Anyone else has any ideas to how to change the pitch?
Does anyone want to share some of their pitching experiences? That would be great as well.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So, suppose you and I are final year students. So, suppose I am practicing my pitch to impress some recruiter. So, if I record and edit it and judge it myself, to me it will always sound interesting. So, what are the main aspects we can judge a pitch upon when we are judging it ourselves before presenting it to anyone?
Yes. So one thing, if you're going for a recruiter, right? Research well about the recruiter, know about the company. Okay. A lot many ideas come just from reading through their core principles or their strategies. Once that is done, you start writing your pitch, craft it, record it by yourself, listen to it, know what mistakes you've made or how many words you're repeating. That would help you a lot. After that, as you said, it'll always sound good to you. So go ahead. You might have people maybe in your family, your elders, some relatives, maybe your friends, their parents who might be recruiters themselves. Go try to connect with them, talk to them, make them listen. Ask them for inputs. They'll definitely review your pitch. And with all those different inputs, make a list of that, and those little things will definitely help you out. Okay, try to pitch yourself to as many people in different domains. Practice makes you perfect. Over here as well.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay.
We have Pavitra's pitch.
It's really nice. Okay, Pavitra doesn't want us to read it. It's nice, and we'll definitely subscribe to your channel. So, guys, whoever's here, do subscribe to Pavitra's channel. Code my
Wow.
TV.
This is great, great pitch, I must say.
Yep.
I think next we have Manaswini.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Ritika, what were you
I
saying?
was just saying that that's it. It was wonderful being here, and thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you so much. I hope you all guys learned something and are gaining something from this at the end. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so thanks, Ritika, for the talk. Next we have Manaswini. She will be talking about how her experience in learning web development, and she did 100 days of code. The good part is she is in her final year of college. Manaswini, why don't you start with?
Yeah, sure. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. So first things first, it feels great to be here. This is my first meetup talk. So I'm excited and also nervous. So if I kind of fumble somewhere or just go on a rant, let me know in the chat. I'll do something and come back. Fine. So I'm Manaswini. I'm a second year electrical engineering student at IIT Madras. And I started learning web development in April due to the lockdown. And I tweet about 100 days of code, which is basically a challenge where you code for a minimum of an hour a day and then you post your progress on Twitter. That's how I came to know about this meetup as well. I actually have a paper here, so if I keep looking here, please don't mind. I have all of my stuff written there. Yeah. So today I'll basically be talking about my journey into programming. I'll touch upon a little about CSS art and why I recommend beginners uh, give it a go. And then I'll end it off with a small list of things which I wish I could have done differently if I had to start again. I'll start talking by how I came into programming and web development. In my 12th standard, normally programming is taught to students in their 12th standard, but I was not taught that because it was not in my syllabus, and also, to be honest, I never took any initiative to explore anything of that sort. Uh, I generally had this notion that developers, sit in front of their computers and do magic. I didn't know that code was written basically to solve problems, right? So it was all out of my mind. Then I started to learn Python from YouTube after my 12th standard exams because I heard this word being thrown around a lot, programming and all of this. So I learned stuff, but never really understood the true implications of what it meant to apply those things in the real world scenarios. So it was all just basic, decent introduction to programming. Then I learned C in my first year at college, and even over there, it was just for good grades. That's it. I never explored anything. But then again, in April, because of the lockdown, since I had nothing else to do, I started learning web development. So actually, my friend told me about all of this, and then through her, I came to know about web development and freelancing and all of that. Actually, since I was in my first year then, there was this fresh enthusiasm to, this fresh energy to do freelancing and become self-sufficient and all of that. So I thought, okay, let me give web development a go. And then that's how I started doing it. And the course instructor actually told us about 100 days of code on Twitter. And during the course of the challenge, I started doing a lot of things, started learning a lot of things. And one of them was CSS art. So CSS art, according to me, it was not possible. Like I never thought CSS had so much potential before coming onto Twitter. The first person that I saw who was making some awesome stuff with CSS was Ellie on Twitter. So after watching her work, I was like thoroughly inspired to start my own as well. And then I started reading up about how to come up with different shapes in CSS, like triangles and all of that. Then one day it kind of dawned on me that you could use percentages and viewport dimensions to make the illustrations responsive, which is make them look the exact same on every device that you view them from. So this felt like a very exciting thing to me. I was very excited to start because I felt like I discovered something really great. I didn't read about it anywhere. Then I made my first CSS illustration. And I actually highly recommend anybody who's starting off with CSS to give CSS art at least one go. Because it can teach you a lot of things. At least to me, it taught me a ton of different things about positioning and responsiveness, to be more precise. Uh, if you don't like it as a beginner, you're trying CSS art and you're a little skeptical about it and you don't like it, that's completely okay because everybody learns in a different way and you can always adopt a method to learn which you find is most effective. But then if you do like it, I can assure you that you will learn a ton of different things. It is very fun, very challenging, and you will love it. At least I loved it a lot and I intend to keep doing more of CSS art in the future. Now, I'm coming into the bulk of my talk, which is basically a list of things that I think I should have done differently as a beginner in programming and also web development. So this list can actually be helpful to anybody who's starting out, and also all the experienced people among you. It might give you a new way to look at things, or maybe like a fresh perspective. So hopefully it will help you all. The first thing is do not be afraid to ask for help, which is, I think, very common. Like a lot of you might have heard it already. I can only imagine how much more amazing my work could have been if only I had reached out to some experienced developer and understood how they would have solved the exact same problem. At least for someone like me who gets anxious to talk to new people, this was hard to learn. I'm still in the process of learning this, but then this helps a lot. So keep this in mind. Do not be afraid to ask for help. The next one is breaks are important. And by important, I mean very, very important. Because at least when I was in the beginning stages of doing web development, when I was not coding, I was always filled with this guilt that I was not doing enough and I was not keeping up with the programming practices and all of that. But it's important to recharge. It's important to take a break, get away from the computer, do something else, and then come back. So yeah, breaks are very important. The next thing is kind of like an add-on to breaks are very important, which is it is important to internalize this thing, like to remember, to remind yourself that there is so much more to life than just coding and programming and web development. I regret that I couldn't cater a lot of time to a lot of hobbies that I had. I'm someone who has so many hobbies, dance, music, art, so many things. But when I started programming, I was so like immersed into this, and I didn't take any break. I just didn't give any time during the lockdown, which I regret. Hobbies are what differentiates us as human beings. So I think it's very, very important to recharge, get away from the computer, like I said before, and pursue something other than programming. Now, another thing which is very close to my heart, this is, I think, very common, which is don't stress yourself looking at other people's work. I've heard this recently, I don't remember the exact words, but it goes something like this. Don't compare your level 0 to someone's level 20. And at least on social media platforms like Twitter, this is very common, I think. But I always deal with this, I've dealt with it, but and that strategy was to view the opposite person's work not as competition or slip into that negative competitive state, but then rather look at it as a learning experience. Look at their code, try to understand what they've done differently or how they've solved that problem, so that first thing you deal with the negativity, and the second thing you're also learning something out of it. So this strategy I think will be very helpful. The next thing is, this is actually a little weird. I didn't know if I had to talk about it. I'm not sure if a lot of you face this, but then I've been through it, so I'm saying it here. There are so many amazing people on social media, especially on Twitter, who post a lot of helpful resources, threads, and articles, and they actually help you with your journey. But there was a time when I went into this constant feeling of not being able to give enough to the developer community. I know this can be a good thing because it will motivate you to write helpful stuff or help others progress in their journey. But then again, when it gets out of hands, it can become very self-destructive. Um, I kind of deal with it by reminding myself one thing, which might sound a little controversial, but again, yeah, I'm just saying it because I use it all the time, and that is to remind yourself that you don't owe anything to a lot of people that you come across. Okay, so I'm actually going to steal a few lines from a blog post that I read recently, which says that when we confuse gratitude with debt, we enslave ourselves to lives that may no longer fit us. So we should not confuse gratitude with debt and always feel that you should be giving always. I mean, I don't say that you should not help others by writing articles or whatever. You should definitely do that. But what I'm saying is, even if you don't do that, that's completely fine. Okay, don't sacrifice your self worth for that. Now, before this gets too deep, I'll actually move on to the next thing, uh, which is I just wish I had talked to more developers and collaborated with them on real world projects. Now, actually, when I was on Twitter and I was posting my work, I got a lot of DMs saying, "Can we just collaborate on this project? Can we just do this project? It's just a fun little project." But I had actually rejected every single offer that I had got because I didn't do the talking for them. My self doubt did the talking. I felt that, maybe I'm not good enough. Or I didn't look at the other side of things. Maybe I learned something. But it was just like, my self doubt did the talking for me, like I said. But I really wish I had taken those opportunities because one, they would have helped me become a better developer, and two, they would have made me a better communicator. Maybe I wouldn't feel so anxious to talk to new people like I'm feeling right now when talking to all of you. Maybe I wouldn't feel that way if only I had communicated with others and known them better, taken more chances. Now this brings me to the last thing that I want to touch on, which is that I just wish I knew that it was okay to do mediocre work. I always thought that my work had to be perfect before others could see it because, I'll tell you, there's a cycle here. Okay, I had this fear of talking to new people, and this kind of adds on to this because, in a way that, when I'm actually presenting imperfect work, people will see it and start giving me feedback. And when they give me feedback, I'll have to talk to them. So, since I had this fear, I was also scared to post imperfect work. But I think this is so wrong. Like, you should post imperfect work, let others know about it, take feedback and work on it. Because there is something that I heard which resonated so well with me, and that is that every expert was once a beginner. So if you want to be perfect with what you're doing, you have to do imperfect stuff, let others see it, and take feedback. For example, recently I tweeted about a Mernstack app that I was making. It was my first ever time that I was making a Mernstack app. I was just looking through articles on the internet and then put everything together and made this app. But I was so scared to put it in front of people. I didn't talk about it a lot. But then later I thought, you know what? Let me just put it in front of people. And then some people were so kind enough to give a lot of feedback. They actually DM'd me with a link to their GitHub repository, and they asked me to look at their code and kind of understand what is happening, what mistakes I made. They were so kind enough to do that. So what I'm saying is there are so many people out there to help you. They are willing to help you. So don't be scared. Don't think that you're wasting their time or something. They'll be very happy to help you. That's it. I think that sums up my talk for today. But before I leave, I'd like to thank every one of you who has listened to me patiently till now. And I'm so happy to be here. This feels like a dream. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
That's so cool, Manaswini. Like, it's a good point that, like, not hesitating to show up what you have worked on is great. You might be able to get good help.
Yeah.
Can you share your, like, code terms? It would be great. Can you show some if you have some? One
Yeah,
of them was shared by Pavitra.
Sure. I'll just do a screen share in a moment.
Okay.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, Pavitra.
Yes, Pavitra.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. It was such a great talk, Manaswini.
Thank you.
I really related a lot to that. I think you should like chill out a little more.
Yeah.
Your work is awesome. It's not mediocre by any means. Don't worry at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, but show us your pens. I think everyone wants to see some of the magic.
Yeah. So is my screen visible now?
Yeah.
Is it
Yes.
visible now?
Oh, that's so. Oh, I've seen
Yeah,
this
okay.
on Twitter.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this is GIF that I made with CSS. It was actually a challenge given by somebody. Yeah, so this was one. And then,
This one was like, I think I saw it on Twitter as well.
yeah,
That's
so,
cool.
yeah,
it's
Oh,
nice.
there are some other things. Yeah, so this is something that I like.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is how it looks.
Oh,
Can you share like one?
Yeah.
Can you share this link with me?
Yeah, sure. I'll link my code then in the chat.
Okay.
And this is again something that I'm proud of.
wow, that's so beautiful. I hadn't seen that at all.
Okay, now this is something that I just made. I wanted to make something and then I made something else. Yeah. Okay,
It's so hard to keep up with you. You've made so many new ones.
I'll just show you all some more which I like. This is a funny one actually. Yeah, so this is the impact of Twitter on my phone battery. I was out of ideas and I just made this. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you so much. And yeah, this is another last thing that I really like. I'll just show you a full page view.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is something that I made. Yeah. So that was my work. I'll just link my code pen in the chat.
Yeah.
So, if anybody has any questions, I think this
Manaswini,
is a good
can you
one.
like sometime, other time, like how you start with GIFs and all?
Yeah.
Maybe that would be really cool, like how you start.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Yeah, does anybody have questions? I think this is a good time. And anybody in the chat on stream has any questions? I can read them out to you guys. I think it'll take a while
If
for
your
the
live
chat to
stream is
get.
saying that's so cool, that what is.
Hello, Manaswini. Am I audible?
Yeah, Kritika.
Okay, so I have just started doing trying my hands in HTML, CSS, and I'm really shocked and glad to see what all the stuff you have made in just CSS. I wanted to know how did you start it with GIS? If I really want to explore it some, then how can I start from like very scratch? Or can you just guide me for that?
Yeah, sure. GIS is something that I started making very recently. It's simple actually. You just have to make the illustration with CSS, the normal static one, where there's no movement in that. And then I kind of look through the GIF like 10 to 15 times, like the original one. And then I break the GIF down into snapshots. So in one snapshot, for example, in the first GIF that I showed you, there's this thing. What should I call it? There's something that's hitting the other bear. Okay, let me call it a bear. Okay, so there's the right bear hitting the left bear. So it's lifting its hand, and there's a transform property, transform of an angle, and then in the second snapshot, it is transforming it to some other angle. So you have to break it down into snapshots and then put it into CSS keyframes. I think.
Okay, yeah, I got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So, one question, Manasi. I mean, you used only CSS, along with you also use some jQuery or some JavaScript concept to animate, basically for animation.
Okay, so I used in some of my code pens it was just pure CSS, and in some others I also used GSAP, which is a animation library which is based on JavaScript. It's just like CSS, but you put those properties in the JavaScript file. GSAP actually gives you more control over your animation. So mostly I've used GSAP, but for the GIFs and all of that, it's just pure CSS.
So you said JSAP, is it?
Yeah, GSAP, GSAP. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so Priyanka has a question. I'll just read it out. My question is that can you please say a few best resources which are helpful to learn according to you? Okay, so I started learning by reading articles. So I took this Udemy course, which was not very helpful for CSS art if you're talking about that. For CSS art, I think you can start reading articles in CSS Tricks, which is a very good website. And then you can go on to CodePen. A lot of people are making this thing with CSS, so you can look through their code and see what they've done. I think these are the only two places that I've gone to the most of the time for learning CSS. That's it. Okay, one more thing. I actually wrote an article recently about CSS art. I'll actually link it in the chat. You can have a look at it.
You can also tweet that article. Maybe like people will have more eyes.
Yeah, I tweeted about it actually.
You know what?
I'm sorry.
On Twitter, I keep watching all these animation people. I mean, I'm following that group 100 Days of Code, and I see people are posting that. I feel where these people basically where they exist on this planet. But yeah, I was not knowing there is one from us.
Yeah, good point. There's one right here, right?
Yeah. Do you have any more questions? Hello? Yeah, I think that's it.
Anyone? Thank you, Mercy. Thank you for really like this was a cool start and like a good experience to know about how you started. I think everybody has different experiences, but that's so cool in second year and you're creating these many cool gifs. I've not seen teddy bear before that. Like I saw it floating on Twitter and like I was like, that's cute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hi, Megha, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Or we can have a little
So
bit of
maybe
networking session if you want to pause between sessions. I have no issue with any of them.
I think let's complete it because it's 3:20 and let's have the time to discuss if
Yeah.
someone is working on something cool and all.
Okay, that would be good. Great. Okay, so
Do you want a
I
break?
will be sharing. No, I don't want a break. I'm really glad that I get to upgrade my knowledge with such good sessions. I would be sharing my screen, so let me know when it appears to you.
Sure, I will.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, so today I would be talking about breaking into development with open source. So the main takeaway of this talk would be how you can start with any new ecosystem or any new language or any new domain with open source. So people generally confuse that open source is something when you reach to a particular point in an industry or in any career domain, then you start contributing to open source or start giving back to the community. But this talk is mainly focused how you can put your first step into development with open source. So, a very little about me. I am Megha Pathak. As I mentioned earlier as well, that I am in my final year. I dabble around JavaScript, React, and I'm a very big product management enthusiast. So, the main reason I would say I'm into tech is I want to know how products are built inside out. What are the art aspects are related to them? How people are, are hooked basically to them due to the habit forming and everything, and of course the tech. I'm currently contributing as an open source developer to Codino, and you can pretty much find everything about me on this website of mine, which is megapattern.tech. So these are two social media handles of mine. First one is of Twitter, second one is of LinkedIn. So if you have any questions after this talk, like when you start implementing stuff, you can always reach out to me. And you can all of course give me feedback about my talk on my social media handles. This is my profile picture on both the handles in case you have difficulty in recognizing me. So a little bit prerequisites of this talk. As we talked a lot in the past 1.5 hours, so I myself can see that we have a mix of people. Some of us are, professional developers. Some of us students, like second year students or final year students. So I didn't kept any competence barrier to this talk. All you need is a curious mind and a little bit will to experiment. So just grab a notepad and pen of yours. So if you find anything useful in this talk, you can simply write it down. So the very first question, when I'm going to talk about open source, why to prioritize open source when we have so much to do? Like we have data structure concepts to learn. We have so many technologies, and when it comes to front end or web development in general, there is this notion that we always feel we are lefting out on something. There is always a new framework or always a new library to catch on weekends. So when we have so much to do, why to prioritize open source? So anyone who is a complete beginner and doesn't understand what open source is, open source actually are softwares that are available with their source code under an open source license generally, and you can study them, you can change them, and you can improve them so that they become better. Generally there is a set of people, or there is a whole community of people who continuously improve them and everything. So those communities becomes open source communities. So these are the few keywords that I would kept like saying again and again in this talk, like open source communities, open source projects, and everything. And in between, if you get doubt like what this particular term means, you can simply unmute yourself. So because I can't see faces while I'm presenting, so you can simply stop me and ask like what this particular term means. So there are some perks of contributing to open source, which I think will give you a strong why to prioritize open source and get started with open source. So the first perk of starting with open source is it gives you power to improve things that you rely on. I personally use Joplin day and night, like my external brain. Joplin is a notepad editor that you can use to create notebooks, sub notebooks, record all your notes, and basically code snippets, all your resources and everything. So it is basically an online journal which I use, and it is open source.
So while using, there are a lot of times when I feel that this particular thing can be improved, or I am having problem with this particular thing in this software. Because it is open source, I have that power that I can make the changes that I want. That's the power that open source gives to me. And there are so many examples of open source projects and tools. One of them is Progestric SQL. So it is also used by many people. I haven't personally explored it much, but it is really popular in the community. So there are this I think is the biggest advantage of open source when you just start. So when you start as a fresher, or I would say the initial years of your career, you always need a growth, basically, that you are improving from where you are standing, you were standing yesterday. So open source gives you that growth that you really can't find anywhere else. You meet new people, and the biggest thing is all of them are inclined to the same interest as yours. You find mentors. And I really like this point that Pavitra shared with me at the one time we talked, that no matter mentoring is not something that somebody is giving you individual attention on something. In open source, even if you see someone's code and just uh, assign this mentor state to that particular code of theirs only, you can learn a lot from just seeing code of people, and just taking them as your mentors that way. And of course, when you interact with so many people and help people in our open source community, you gain a lot of people skills. This is another perk of starting with open source. When you start with open source, even you contribute a semicolon to any code, it is showcased as a public artifact of your skill. So suppose most of these things happens on, suppose, GitHub, GitLab. So whenever you contribute to a code, you are always represented as a contributor to it. I will demystify all these terms, contributor and community and everything, in the later stage of this talk. But yeah, as of now, you can understand, like if you are writing any code for anyone, like any open source community, you can it is always visible publicly. So anyone, suppose a recruiter is looking towards you, or you are simply enriching the tech and it is visible to all. Another thing is, there are no walls to open source. Even if you are a man or a woman or a dog or even a ghost, if you can code or can contribute to any software in any terms, there are no walls to it. You can simply go and like share what you want to contribute to them. Again, this is something that you only get in open source. That open source makes you an explorer instead of a warrior. Since I've like started up with my final year, this is a thing that I am personally encountering a lot. Wherever in your career you want a certain opportunities, there are a few barriers that are must for you to cross on. You should know this much of DSA. Then there should be a certain level of people skills in you, a certain level of design skills or development skills. Then only you can gain an opportunity. But in terms of open source, you are very much in charge of whatever you want to contribute to, or whatever you want to work upon. All you need is just like you saw a particular problem, just try fixing it. Then you saw another piece of problem, you went ahead and you solved it. You simply become an explorer. That's what explorers do. They went around a land and simply roamed around and explored it. Then they saw some another land and explored it. There's no certain mindset of theirs that they want to explore the whole earth, or the whole universe or anything. Explorers are simply the people who explore it one bit after another. So open source actually makes you that explorer of your career. And again, if you are excited ahead and you got your why up from the last few points, yeah, So she's like, as I mentioned that you could be an explorer and there are no walls, and I got you excited enough. Then I will be moving ahead to explain you what are the different ways you can contribute to open source and what are the actual tactics to get into the playground of open source. So the part till now was actually around the motivation, that why you should get started with open source. So let me check a bit if you have any questions. So yeah, so if anybody have any questions till now, you can ask me. So like this is a particular segment till now of my talk. Okay, I see no questions, so I'm moving ahead. So yeah, this point of mind, that if you are excited and decided in your mind that I will give open source a try, the very first thing that I would like to share with you is open source is way more than code. So we have this particular notion in our head that contributing to open source is more like coding stuff out, coding software out, but it is not like that. So if you like to plan events and everything, the open source communities always want to promote themselves, so you can help them with that. If you have a knack for designing, by this I don't mean that you need a professional degree in designing or anything. If you want to explore designing, you can simply reach out to any open source organization and ask them if they have anything that you can design for them. They are always open for them. The walls in open source are very low. Then, if you like to write, you can simply contribute to their documentation. And if you like to organize, you can simply help them in organizing their issues and pull requests. And if you have any trouble in understanding these terms, we will go through all of them one by one. And if you are a industry professional working as a professional from long and you really don't want to organize stuff or write documentations, you can simply help them by reviewing the code. So whenever somebody contributes code to any open source organization, there are people who review it and help them in making it better. So you can enough to give this talk to you. So at first, when it appeared to me that I would be giving, like I have opportunity to give this talk and give a talk in this meetup. Breaking into open source was the very first point that clicked into in my mind, because I personally break into React using open source. So as I mentioned when we just started the meetup, that I had this Ross Rachel relationship with web development. So I was one of those few people who just go through HTML, CSS, and after going through the basics of JavaScript, they simply quit because there is so much confusion ahead. I personally shifted from web development because I wanted to explore beyond the bounds of tech personally. So what are the things other than writing code that I can do? After I explored all of it, I wanted to explore more into the React ecosystem, and as I personally liked how people are contributing so much around React and building so cool things around React. So I wanted to start with React, but there was this fear in me that what if I didn't, put that commitment ahead and stick with web development this time again. So I remember that Seema shared with us that there are so many people that you can come across who hate JavaScript, but again there are so many people who love JavaScript. So I searched around the web to find the JavaScript communities, React communities. So I came across one, and they were the organization name is Codino, as I mentioned in my intro. So they were planning to build up an open source project from scratch, and luckily it was going to build in React. So I just I simply put forward that I would like to contribute to this one, and I would like to build this from scratch with React. So they agreed, as there are no barriers. As I mentioned that there was no competence barrier, that this much of DSA, then only it would allow you to build this particular project of ours in React. So they allowed me, and from then only I started my React journey. So all the things that I got to implement that in that particular project, I learned it side by doing some small projects of mine that gave me understanding around different topics. So that's how I personally break into React with open source, and that's how I got the understanding that how anyone can break into any new language or any new domain, or I would say a development career on in whole with open source. So how you can contribute to open source as a professional? So there are so many perks that a student gets while contributing to open source, and these perks are no less when it comes to contributing to open source as a professional. So it happens many a times that most of the stuff professional works upon are closed source. So closed source is simply that when a particular user is using a particular software, the source code is not shared. But in open source, the source code is shared, and you get to know who was the particular person who wrote that code that you are seeing. So as a professional also, if you want to create these public artifacts of yours, that this is your competence and these are the stuff that you have been building, you can always contribute to open source organizations. So I personally know a few people who are like working professionals in companies like Flipkart, Myntra, and they are like core contributors to many of the communities. And if you, of course, being a professional, anytime wants to give back to the tech community and want to enrich the tech community, open source is the best means to it, because you get to interact so many people that are junior to it, and basically apprentice to you, so you get to like explain get to review their codes, and like you shape them into better professionals. And yeah, so there's one more story that I would like to share with you. So remember the time when you were 3 years old or 4 years old, and that like certain uncle of yours asked to you like what you want to do when you grow up. So I personally used to say that I want to be a painter or anything. So painting is still a hobby of me that particularly keeps me sane from all the things. I actually laughed when Manaswani said that there should be things that you chill out with when you are not coding and not doing web development. So that painting was my thing, but I never get to be a professional artist in that terms, that going to art school and everything. So there are a certain, I would say, wildest dreams that are encapsulated in each one of us. So I have a friend of mine. He had this interest in astronomy ever since from his childhood. So what he did was, 2 years back, he came across an open source organization who was developing a software that would be used by astrophysicists. So he got fascinated by it, and he raised his hand towards them that I would like to help you build this software. At first, the only thing he knew was that the software was getting built in Python, and he know basics of Python, and what knows how to move certain things around Python. But the actual software that was going to build had needed him to get the domain knowledge of astronomy, which he didn't have, like around physics and everything. What happened the later was, he started contributing to typos and documentation of that project. Later he get to code that whole software into Python, and the more he grew into that project, the more he get to know about his deepest interest, that was in astronomy. Like the more he explored, the more he get to know about the physics behind it and everything. So that's how I personally respect it a lot, that how he fulfilled his wildest dream with open source, and like any one of us can do so. So yeah, so moving ahead, open source act as this is how like open source, if you extend my last point further to fulfill your wildest dreams, at first it can just start as a hobby that you are contributing to an open source project that is around something that is personally a very keen interest of yours or a hobby of yours. But later when you contribute much and your contributions are substantial enough, you of course get opportunities like landing your dream jobs with open source organizations. and with the help of open source organizations. If not, you don't want to join that particular open source organization as a full-time person or anything. So what's the difference between open source and closed source? So if I offer a freshman year student, like you get to intern with Microsoft for 6 months, and on the other hand, I simply show him or her a particular project that he or she can contribute as an open source developer for 6 months. So what they would choose? There are different pros and cons associated with both of them. When you contribute to open source, a very big like user base of yours is are particularly developers. So when, like as I mentioned, Joplin, so many of us use different node editors, and very less of us actually know, like most of the people who know about Joplin or use Joplin are actually developers. So a very big user base of yours is are developers when you are working as an open source developer. But when you are working as a closed source developer, suppose in any company like Microsoft, or any startup, there are a variety of users that you get. Like if you are working in FirstCry, the users are basically parents, and the user base is around the would-be parents or people that are already parents, and there is a vast variety of people who you get to build stuff when you are working with open closed source. But in case of closed source, you don't get to take your work and show it as a public artifact, as I discussed earlier, but you get this advantage in terms of open source. So it is a very big dilemma for most of the students, like when to choose open source and when to choose closed source. So my suggestion is, why not choosing both? It is good to intern with closed source companies or big tech giants to understand how things can be built for a vast variety of users. But at the same time, it is really appreciable if you continuously contribute to open source, because when it comes to open source, you get to work with very competent developers that are in the same industry and that are senior to you. And of course, you get to show your work as a public artifact, which is a very big necessity at present time. So next I have 5+1 steps that you can implement when you want to find your first open source project. But before coming to those steps, I would like to take some doubts. So let me open the chat first. Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody have any doubts of yours, or if anybody among us have contributed to any open source project earlier and want to share a little bit experience around it, so that is welcome. So a little bit of check, is anyone sleeping or like okay, Pavitra is not sleeping.
I am watching.
I think it's difficult to talk to a mute thing.
Yeah, but no, this is really new for us. Like nobody has ever stopped in the middle of their talk to ask for input, and I think everyone's frozen. Yeah. We can have a discussion on this at the end of the talk.
Sure.
Like I'll stop
So
the
I'm
stream at the
yeah,
end of the talk, and we can have a discussion. Right now, everyone is on stream also.
Okay. So let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we are all listening.
Yeah. I was just giving a check. So yeah, coming to the 5+1 steps that you can follow to simply find out your first open source project that you want to contribute on. So the first things are really special. The first boyfriend you had, or the first project you worked on, or the first CSS art you made. So this is about your first open source project. So the very first thing is, consider your interest. I couldn't find a bigger font than this to write your interest, because considering this is that important. So when you contribute to open source, there would be a plenty of things that would be in your life all the time. So to simply separate out your open source contributions to that a big mess of things, or I would say busyness of things, it is important that you put forward your deepest interest that you have. Like my interest like go beyond every bound and pens. Like I have interest in painting, like fictional writing and everything. If you have like I have some friends of mine that have like trouble in figuring out what their interests are. So your interest could be as baseline as you like eating good food. So I personally came across some open source projects like 2 weeks back that were around food industry and how people who have interest in different cuisines and different foods can contribute to those projects in terms of building recipe apps, and there was a lot of stuff. There was a whole list actually. So for the very first step is consider your interest. The next step is find your value proposition. Value proposition is a very heavy word that I used here. So value proposition can come across three things, that are skills, tech stack and competence. And if you have trouble figuring out what your value proposition is, you can simply like think of this sentence in your mind. I can help you with, and a blank. So as soon as you put your first step into an open source community, after you consider your interest and did a little bit of Google search and find a open source community, just simply think of what is the few things that I can help you with. I can help you in writing documentations. I can help you coding stuff in React, or I can help you in planning events that you would like to do for promoting your open source organizations. The next thing is finding open source organization. So there are many means that you can use for finding an open source organizations. Like there are different programs like GSOC. There is like GSOC stands for Google Summer of Code. Then there is Google Summer of Docs. Then there are Linux foundations, and you can simply find open source organizations by simply doing a Google search around your interest and simply type open source organization in front of it. And of course, if you like come across like if you come and join meetups like this, or you have people developers in your network, you can simply ask them what are the open source projects that they come across that they find interesting, or they simply like, and you can contribute to them. The next thing is, as soon as you land on an open source organization or join an open source community, you need to know what is the thing that you are stepping into. So there are three main things that that basically tell you the body and soul of an open source organization. So these are documentation, their code base, and their code community. So when you will go through their documentation, their code base, and their community, there would be a lot of jargons that you would come across for the very first time. So let me demystify those jargons for you. So these are all the jargons. So I will go through them one by one. So the very first thing, when you see any GitHub repository of any open source organization, is the issues. Issues are simply the things that that people have reported as bugs, or as a particular error in any software, open source software, or any open source platform. Then there are mailing list and Slack channels and Jitter channels that you can use for communicating with open source organizations. Then there are few people, like there are few authorities associated with every open source organization. So first of all, there is an author or a like group of people. There could be multiple authors who have created that initial open source project. Then there is a owner, that is particularly the admin of that open source organization. Then there are maintainers. Maintainers are the people who actually navigate the whole vision of an open source organization. Like what will the open source organization will be doing in the next 1 week, 6 months, or a year. Then if you get to contribute your code or documentation or anything to the the code base or the documentation of the open source organization, you become a contributor. And as long as you are using that particular open source software, you are part of the community. So there are certain documentations that are for like these different authorities. When you are part of community, there is a readme document for you that tells you everything that you need to know about a certain open source project, right from the installation or keys or anything you need to know before you install it or start using it. Then there are contributing guidelines for people who want to be contributors. So these contributing guidelines simply guide you where the certain steps that you need to follow. Like if you want to contribute a certain code piece or documentation to that open source organization. Then there are pull requests. So pull request, let me explain this with you an example. Suppose I am an ice cream seller and I have handed you our ice cream cone. And if you reported to me that the ice cream cone is leaking, it is an issue. But if you simply reported it to me that the ice cream cone was leaking and I fixed it, it would be a pull request. And if I accept your fixed cone and use it further for my production purpose to sell ice creams further, you become a contributor to my particular shop. So these are the main jargons that you will come across. And if you come across anything like beside these, you can simply Google them all anytime and ask in the open source community. People really love to help new members. There is one more thing that is associated with every open source project, that is code of conduct. Code of conduct is simply the ground rules that are associated with every open source organization, and people who are in the community or the contributors are abide to fulfill those rules. There is a certain importance that is associated with code of conduct. Like the grass is not always greener always greener. So there would be a few times when there's a chance that you can get exploited or your work doesn't get accepted or anything. Then comes the code of conduct that helps you in protecting yourself. So always keep code of conduct in touch and understand its importance and move ahead with it so that you can protect yourself as well as that matter to you. So a lot of talk around. It's finally time to contribute. So this is a very common scenario that can happen with any beginner or any developer, that you can simply get stuck to the research and just keep thinking okay, these are the things that are going on in the community. Okay, these are the issues I'm finding with the open source software of mine, but you just keep halting the contributing loop. So there are a certain divisions in which you can make your contributions. So there are the very zeroth level contributions are: you came across an open source organization, you liked it, you like their software, simply share about it through your social media handles. By this, this is zeroth level contribution because this is a very below minor level contribution, but it gives you an initial, it helps you in wetting your initial foot in any open source organization, and of course it helps the organization as well. So the next thing is minor contributions. Minor contributions could be simply reporting bugs to them through issues, or simply helping the new people who are coming in the community in simply understanding the software, or just helping in them debugging the problems they are getting while just when they are just starting up in with the open source software. So issues, helping in the community, these are the some of the things that I can think of when it comes to minor contributions. Then comes major contributions, that you gave some feature suggestion that we can have this particular add-on feature in our open source software, and then you actually worked on that particular feature suggestion and contributed your code or contributed the documentation to that open source community. So these are some of the major open source contributions. And again, I would like to mention that there is no construct or there are no definitions. You are always free to create your own definitions of zeroth level contributions, minor contribution, major contributions. So whatever you think is a major contribution from your end, like I can imagine if I start as a fresher and I really don't know what to code, like I really don't know when to put a semicolon or anything. If I'm writing documentation of it for an open source organization, that is a major level contribution from my end. So it is up to you how you level your contributions, but the most important thing is to keep contributing. So this is the next thing. When you contribute to an open source organization, keep the contribution and code loop alive. Don't be a mundane robot that only codes, or don't just be a person who put on no contribution to actual contribution to the community.
So
and
first, understanding
simply,
difference between Jolly and Varna.
only talks in the community about stuff. So like always keep that loop alive, that you are talking as well as showing your work in terms of doing some actual contributions. So we have got this part. The one thing that I just saved for the ending part of my presentation was whenever you just start with an open source organization, like even if you decide today that there are like so many pull requests and issues. It can't happen all the time that there could be some time that like your contributions got acknowledged after 2 weeks or sometimes after a month. So just be humble and be patient. Like because people are busy and you are busy as well. So you have to have like this patience in you, because the only thing that I can say with my experience in open source till now is open source is a long-term game. So and in every long-term game, like whether it is your career or relationships or even open source, it is very important to be humble and patient and give things time. So like the concluding points of my presentation, whenever I say that be patient, many a times it gets misinterpreted by people and they become laid back. So don't be laid back. Keep contributing and like keep your contributions alive. If they don't get acknowledged, don't take it as a setback for your career. Look for another open source organization or simply just wait a bit and prepare some another set of contributions. And of course the world is your oyster, so just simply fulfill your wildest dreams with open source. These are two additional readings that I would suggest for anyone who wants to start with open source. So one is opensource.com, another is opensource.guide. So these both are really helpful if you just want to begin up with open source. Then lastly, halt thinking and start contributing and make impact. Thank you.
That's really cool, Mega. Like breaking down, actually you broke it down in steps and what are the terms and like that's so cool. Anyone has any questions? Mega, what do you contribute to right now? Or like are you planning to?
At present, yeah. Someone is speaking. Hi, Andre.
Thank you for
We can hear you.
such a cool speech and such an enormous amount of knowledge I got from this. Really, I did not have even a single idea of what open source is and how should I start exploring, how should I start with it. So I want a suggestion from you, from your side, that I'm just a beginner and I have some amount of knowledge in
I see
Python.
this on Twitter. I was
So
like,
how
where do
should I
these people
start?
live? No, I saw one is here only. Super, I did.
What
This in our
courses
group
can I
only.
do?
Like one that can be shot.
Okay. So as a next, yeah. So as I mentioned, Manpreet, in my the 5+1 steps, I would say like beside Python, if there is any XYZ interest of yours, food, art, or anything around it, or simply if you are in totally into development. So there are some developer tools also that gets built as open source softwares open source software. So you can simply Google search for like what are some like research is everything. I personally believe if you want to go anywhere in your life, research is the very foremost thing that you need to do. So yeah, so like you can simply take that interest of yours, and even if there is no as such interest, you can simply search for developer tools that like help developers, and there are plenty of them. So Python is really like in trending these days. So like there could, and of course you can yeah, there's one thing that I forgot to mention. Like if you are want to like just begin up, you can always look forward to GSOC archives. So in GSOC archives, there are the organizations that participated in GSOC in the past years, and there are many there is a many there this happens a many a times that there are projects that didn't get the right developers, I would say, or the right time by people, so they didn't get built.
Actually,
Every
don't know
open source
actually
organization have
what
a plenty of
audio is going
such
there.
projects. So
I
you
don't know
can
if what
simply
I
search for
spoke
those
now is
projects
there or not.
and simply just put your hand forward that I want to help you build this software. In return, just help me just gaining up skills. Like I'm a Python beginner, and I will level up my help you to build your whole software. So you can simply help like help people, they will help you. It is a very very simple notion. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
So anything else? Adisha, you are not audible if you are speaking.
Oh, oh, sorry. We can add one more thing. I'll add one more thing to Megha's thing. It's like whenever you see a library or a component, there are issues. You can maybe start with it with the easy bugs or low-hanging fruits. In Python, it is low-hanging fruits. So I started with a very small bug that is just changing the CSS color. So that will give you a great sense of achievement also, Manpreet.
Yeah. And many a times there are plenty of typos in documentation, and people just start with, just removing those dashes and, just framing things right. And that gives you an initial understanding what is the organization you are jumping into. So coming to the thing, as you asked Adisha, what is the thing that I am contributing to? So it is basically a platform that is being created for getting more designers as contributors to open source. So you can, in the simplest terms, you can see it as a platform like GSOC for designers, and at the same time, like a platform that will serve as a community for designer contributors in the tech world. So, and of course, I'm looking forward to find more projects that I can contribute to. So, I found like Seema is there and Pavitra is there. So, if you find anything like around that could interest me, you can always tell me. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Anyone has any other questions?
Great talk, Megha. I really liked it.
I think that's no. Thank you, Megha. I think Pavitra.
Yeah, I don't know. My audio is all messed up because of the streaming. I think I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah, great talk. I really loved it. I heard it once before and it's much more improved today.
Yeah. Thank you everyone who joined on stream. Pavitra, I think we can stop this stream
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.